Hey everyone, Cream Ray here, and today I have Joshua Carabatsakis, founder of Eikon Sports Group. Joshua, I know I butchered it, but how's it going?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Decided to get away from the Canadian cold and get down to the States for a little bit. So just this is the office for the week.
Nice. What state are you in right now?
I'm in in Arizona. Sorry.
Nice. Look at the beautiful palm trees. So
Yeah,
I just want to again just thank you for joining us today. It's
of
awesome to
course.
have you on. So can you just please introduce yourself to the viewers?
Yeah, for sure. So like Kareem said, my name's Joshua Carabatsakis. I'm a licensed player agent, intermediary with Canada Soccer. Eikon Sports Group is the agency that I founded in 2020, beginning of 2020. I've been working as a licensed agent for over 3 years now in Canada. Graduate from University of Winnipeg, played soccer on the provincial team, growing up with Manitoba for 4 years. So I have extensive background as far as the youth soccer goes in Canada, and kind of used all of those experiences to get into the industry. And now we're at a place where we're able to help. I think we've done over 20 contracts in the Canadian Premier League, probably around 10 now overseas in a few different countries in Scandinavia, Malta, New Zealand, Australia. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about myself anyways.
Amazing. Congratulations to you for all the success that you've been able to accomplish with your company. Show us the sweater there. You got the logo on right now.
We got this is the Eikon Sports Group. Maybe we'll do a merch drop one of these days. So yeah, got the sweater. Always repping, especially when you're in a new country, right? Or a different country. You gotta, people ask questions, and then it starts the conversation. Oh, what's Eikon Sports Group? And then you spread the branches that way.
Amazing. Yeah. So I kind of butchered that too. You said Econ.
Econ, yeah. So econ is a direct translation. I'm Greek, so that's my background. So econ is a direct translation of icon from English to Greek. So people call us Eikon Sports Group, which technically in English translate or Canadian English translation would be correct. So econ is how it's supposed to be pronounced, but icon works as well.
Amazing. So you mentioned that you have a football background, and then you transitioned into the agency space. How'd you, what made you become an agent?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think a lot of it for me was I was playing still like high level here in Canada in the men's Premier Division of Winnipeg, playing there still up until my early 20s. And actually kind of how the agency was born. I actually had torn my ACL. I think I was 21 or so, and was kind of bedridden for about at least a month or two, part of the rehab process after the surgery. And at that time, there was rumblings about the CPL coming around, and I'd always had interest in sports management, and obviously where the game of football could go in Canada. And once it became something that was actually palpable and something tangible that you could look at, a league coming to Canada, I started doing a ton of research. What type of players could we see in this league? Where are they going to draw these players from? What's recruitment going to look like? And at that point, I kind of pinpointed a list of a few hundred Canadian players that I felt could be in the Canadian Premier League at that time. And lo and behold, probably over 50% of the players on that list ended up signing in the league. And kind of in that transition of starting to reach out to clubs, looking at how to become an agent, because like I said, I was kind of at the stage where I was finishing university and was interested in how you could become an agent, and had that interest in the industry of sports management already. Was able to make contact with Rob Gale, who was the then manager and head coach of Valor FC and used to be the technical director for Manitoba Soccer when I was with the provincial team program, and going through like camps for the NTC, RTC camps that we had as well. So he was a good connection for me just right off the bat, and he was kind of the person that opened the door to me bringing my first set of clients into Valor FC for their inaugural season.
Amazing. So I'm sorry to hear about the ACL injury.
No, that's okay. It happens.
Yeah, it's a part of the game.
Exactly.
But it's amazing that you've been able to still be a part of the game, but just on another side, right? You're still helping players sign pro contracts, and you've mentioned 20. You've been able to help sign 20 pro contracts this far.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned the opportunity with Valor FC. Is that always the case? Like, is it always about the relationship with the coaches, or is it with the owners? Like, what are the key relationships to get these signings?
Yeah, I would say that is definitely key. I think in some ways you don't want to overstate a relationship, because at the end of the day, it is about the player and the quality of the player and, them fitting in. But it's like anything in business and in life. If you have a bit of a strong relationship and there's trust that's already established with a certain club, it makes things easier to get deals done and business done, and, equitable on both sides, as you always hope. It really depends on the structure of the club, because you're looking at Europe, where it's very, there's a sporting director who's primarily taking care of, recruitment, negotiating contracts, even things like relocating the players if they're foreigners, things like that. Maybe a little bit more of a better established hierarchy. And then you come to, and in some instances in Europe where clubs do have smaller budgets, it is the manager that's dealing with these things. But most cases, it will be a sporting director or a club president or a CEO of a club. In the CPL, for example, most of the coaches are also wearing both hats, as a coach and a general manager. So you are dealing directly with them. But there are, I look at York United, for example. Angus McNabb's a guy that I speak with a lot, who has we have a good relationship, and he's really kind of that more North American sports model, I guess you could say, where they're bringing in the players through him. He's the CEO of the club and signs the players, and then the coach is there to coach the team. So you kind of just need to pick up, I guess, as an agent, you need to pick up on the hierarchy of the club, understand who is the decision maker, who is the person that's going to make the signings, because you want to speak with that person, as soon as possible. Of course, maybe the door is open through a connection at the coach level, and then he puts you in touch with the sporting director, and you go from there. But I think any agent would tell you, as soon as you can be in direct contact with the person that will ultimately make those decisions, the better it is for you and the client, for sure.
Understood. And great points. So it seems like it was like perfect timing for you, right? Like,
yeah,
PPL came, you got an agency, like the seeds were planted at the perfect time, and you've established yourself. So, I mean, again, it's amazing to see what you've done. And like, I've recently just come across your company. So the team is small. It's just two of you guys, right? Or is there more?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Timing, really, it's weird how things, like, it's as cliche as it is, sometimes everything happens for a reason, right? So I kind of looked at it that way with the torn ACL too. It was, it sucked, obviously. But it opened doors, because I was, stuck with nothing else to do. And I have such a passion for Canadian soccer, football in general, globally. And also, once being a player, maybe not at the professional level, but also understanding what maybe more opportunities could have done for someone like myself, or many players I grew up with that were talented and just didn't have the exposure. So kind of all those things aligned. And I'd say passion and timing, a little bit of luck on the timing, like you said, were big parts. And it is just myself, and then my business partner, Cody Bomek, who kind of takes care of more of the behind the scenes stuff, that are working with the company. We are in kind of the final stages of finalizing a partnership with a well-established agent and attorney down in the States, who's been working in the MLS since 1996. But more to come on that in the next few months, I guess.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I was going to say a small team doing huge things, right? That's always the case, though.
Yeah.
So how'd you go about getting your license? Did you have a relationship with somebody that was connected to in that space already, or was it something that you were just figuring out along the way?
I would honestly say more figuring it out along the way. I think that's been a lot of, I don't want to say so much the agency aspect. I think a lot of that has come pretty naturally to me, just knowing the game and understanding sports business. But I think as far as getting my license and figuring out how to go about doing that was all done on my own, as far as figuring it out and doing my research. But it's a pretty straightforward process. Here in Canada, they don't have exams or like tests that you need to take in order to get your license, which I don't really fully agree with. I wish it was a little bit more regulated here in Canada. It's kind of the wild, wild west, as some people have described it, as far as agents go here. Whereas in other federations, like in France, for example, I know you have to write an exam, and there's other kind of entry requirements. But here, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, yeah. As you mentioned, Europe there are tests. United States there's a test as well. But in Canada, so what's the process in Canada? I've never looked at it in Canada. I've looked at it in the U.S. Can you just share with us the process?
Yeah, in Canada, you'll submit a resume, references, what you've done in your career up to that point, references, obviously business references or personal references. You'll submit a criminal record check. And really, to be honest, that's pretty much it, aside from paying fees. I might be forgetting about a few, supplementary documents you'll need to provide, like your passport or something like that. But yeah, and then you just pay a fee, and once you pay that registration fee, just annually, you renew it every year. It's a smaller fee once you renew it, and that's pretty much the extent of it.
Got it. And I just want to go back a little bit. You mentioned that, out of the 100 players that you selected, you said 50% of them got picked up in the CPL. So what do you think that you do, or your filtering system, or or scouting, what is it that you do that you have such a good eye for picking the right player and placing them in the right place?
I think what separates us and what's allowed us to have success is understanding the different levels of football globally, not just in Canada, but understanding, and based on evidence-based approach. Like, we do hire, or not hire, we bring in interns that look after like data as far as analyzing transfers and those things. So we're able to look at, okay, a player's come from this league, and typically we'll make the jump to this league afterwards. So you'll see it in Europe with like selling leagues, for example, right? You look at players going from Red Bull Salzburg or wherever it may be, going into a top league in Europe. You kind of see there's a precedent of that. Or Lille is a selling club, where they have a ton of young talents, right? Where they'll move them into then the top clubs in Europe from there. So it's no different in Canada. It's just a smaller scale. We've seen top players coming out of NCAA that have gone to the pro ranks. You've seen top players coming out of League One Ontario that have gone to the pro ranks. Top players coming out of U Sports now. And at the time there wasn't Canadian Professional League, so you're looking at USL players as well. So kind of just understanding where are these players going to come from and who are the top players from those leagues. And once you have a good idea of that, you watch video on the player, you see where they could fit, figure out how they fit into a certain team and how they want to play, and go forward from there.
Got it. So now, you guys are finding the players, you guys know how to scout these players. What's the process of like bringing them in? How do you guys go about bringing in players? Can anybody reach out to you guys, or are you guys very selective of who you guys bring in, and how do you guys go about doing so?
Yeah, I think we're definitely more selective, for sure. I would say that we're more often the ones that are going to be recruiting and reaching out to the players directly. I think every once in a while a player comes to your attention that surprises you, and that's obviously a welcome surprise, never a complaint. But for the most part, we're told about a player through word of mouth or watching film, and you come across a player, or there's different databases. Like, honestly, shout out to Canucks Abroad. Those guys do really good work as far as identifying Canadian players, because we are ultimately focused on Canadian players for the most part. Or say your client's at a club and there's a player that is looking for representation and doesn't have an agent, and reaches out to your client and says, hey, do you have an agent? And if the client that we have is speaking highly of us, the player might come to us. And then again, if they're a young or just a talented player in general, that's a way we'll sign a player. And then like I said, sometimes it's just we're scouting and we're looking for, hey, a club in X league is looking for a player that fits this profile. Maybe it's initially you just bring the player to the club, help them with their deal. And if everything goes well, then they decide to sign with your agency for full service representation. That's another way that it can be done. So it's kind of just different. There's a lot of different ways the recruitment process can go for an agency, for sure.
Got it.
But some of them, and this is kind of like an example, sorry to cut you off, but some of them it's, a 3-year process too, where like you've kind of identified a player at 16, 17, and maybe they're not quite ready for the pro jump. Maybe they're in an academy, an MLS academy, for example, and, kind of want to see how things go for them there. And then over the next year, and say at 18, 19, they're not quite sticking, or they're not quite looking like the pathway to the first team is there. And they come to you, and you've already created that relationship when they were 16. And then the process is pretty straightforward to sign them to the agency afterwards.
Got it. So, finding a player at the age of 16, are you guys able to sign through their parents, or is that something you guys have to wait for until they turn 18?
Yeah, we haven't signed any players that are 16 yet, but the parents would have to sign off on anything like that. It would require signature of the parent or guardian in that case.
Got it. Can you just share with us your track record of the players that you guys have helped to sign pro contracts?
Yeah. Now you're making me go back in the archives of my brain here.
I know you know the guys. Come on. These
yeah, no, for sure. Well, even so, it's funny. I was talking with someone about this. One of our clients is Hinga Salamani. He reached out to us, and kind of like I was saying, a welcome surprise. Reached out to us back in, I think it was early 2019. Pretty fresh as far as having my agent's license. And we moved him to New Zealand. He had a standout season there in their premiership. Moved to Calgary last year. And then now this year we've moved into the Malta Premiership. But it's interesting because we've, in 3 years, obviously you would like for stability in a player's career, but sometimes moves are what are required. It's just part of the game, especially in such a global sport. But it's funny because in 3 years we've managed to find him a team, in the top tier of countries as well, in 3 different continents, right? Because New Zealand's the Oceania, Calgary is North America, and then you have Malta, which is Europe. So it's kind of interesting one there. William Accio is a guy that we helped right out of college sign his pro deal, and obviously he's done really, really well with Valor, and we feel very confident that he'll move on to another level in the next year. Matteo Debrian, someone who just was announced today, signing with Valor FC, coming out of Carleton. It's technically his second professional contract because he signed with Atletico Ottawa when he was 17 or just turned 18, but he's a guy we've now just helped get back into the pro ranks, which I'm really happy about. He'll do great things. Yeah, there's a number of other players. I mean, and then it's kind of on the other side of the spectrum too, where like there's a guy like Jordan Wilson who we brought to York United last year. He was in Denmark for 6 years, and a guy that again I touched base with probably in 2018, 2019, introduced myself and just said, hey, I know you're doing well in Denmark, but there's a new league here in Canada, as you've seen. If you're ever interested in coming back and it's the right time and playing at home, let me know. And, lo and behold, in 2020, we had that conversation and made something happen with New York United. And he's, 30 years old, but it's still, it served a purpose for him at the time of his career to work with us. And then now we've established a relationship where, we'll work together for a long, long time. So there's kind of guys, like I said, William Matteo, who just starting their pro career, and then there's guys who maybe they worked with another agent in their early 20s, mid 20s, but looking for something different and reach out to us at that time too.
That's amazing. All the players that you just mentioned are doing huge things, and for you guys to be able to bring over a 30-year-old player just shows how strong your relationships are with these clubs. Do you guys have relationships with all the CPL clubs?
Yeah, every club in the CPL.
Got it. Okay, cool. So with your company, what's your mission?
Yeah, I mean, our mission right now is to just keep providing pathways to Canadian players. I think there's still tons of work to be done. You'd be lying to yourself if you said you were satisfied at just working with, predominantly players in the CPL and players in Scandinavia. Obviously we want to work with players in MLS Next Pro, which, like I said, in the next month or so, we'll have a partnership announced down in the States, which will be massive for our players as far as a pathway. And then really it's getting involved in the European market, more in mainland Europe at some point. But we've noticed that there's a lot of success for Canadians going to play in Scandinavia, and then kind of using that as a platform into Europe, into other countries from there. So I think for us, it's just continuing to increase and grow those relationships in Scandinavia, and again, develop the US relationships, because there's obviously a bursting market down with the MLS. And at the end of the day, just keep providing opportunities for Canadians. I think the more pathways there are for them, the better. You want to get them to a point where they're, looking at multiple options rather than, hey, you have to go this one way because this is the way it's done. If we can give them multiple platforms, multiple pathways, then I think we're doing best by the player at that point.
Got it. Yeah, that'd be really good. And you guys are obviously working towards that. Coming towards the end here, what differentiates you guys from your competitors, and how many competitors do you guys have here in Canada?
Oof. I guess I can't speak fully to how many competitors we have, because it's kind of an evolving thing. And, I think everyone is trying to do what's best for the Canadian players. So competitors, I don't even necessarily think of it that way. I hope that even if it's another agency in Canada and we're in the direct competing market, hopefully we can collaborate on deals together, that serve clients best, regardless. Maybe our agency is strong in a certain market, but this agency is in another market where they're quite strong as far as connections, and we can work together on those things. But I think what we do differently is, I'm a young guy. I'm very tapped in, I'd say, as far as connected with my clients, and very day-to-day communication is big. I think a lot of players, part of what they don't like at a bigger agency is they kind of feel like they're a number or like a product on a conveyor belt, where they don't talk to their agent or their representation really ever, unless maybe there's a deal that comes up. And lots of times you kind of get lost in the shuffle at these bigger agencies. So for us, it's about keeping it personal, the relationships, and that's why we won't have more than about 20 or so clients, because that's a number that between the two of us, we're able to handle and give everyone the full attention they need. So I'd say that's a big part of it, is the personalized aspect of our management, our day-to-day representation. Connections, relationship building, that's just something I'm strong in. I've studied different courses on psychology and business, in my time in university to have that kind of background, but also just experience, and generally being good with people, is something that's an asset, for an agent, because like anything else, it's networking. It's like being a real estate agent. You need to be able to communicate with the prospective buyer. You need to be able to give them the details that are required. And it's the same thing when you're talking about a player or a client, right? You need to give the club the information that they need to know in a concise way, so they feel comfortable signing a player. So that's something that I feel we're strong in. We're definitely innovative. We're using Y-Scout in Stat full access for our clients. So if a client, wants to compare two different clubs that might be interested in them, we're able to say, okay, I'm going to download some clips from Instat on both teams. You're going to sit down and watch them both. And, you get an idea of how the team plays. That plays a decision into which club the client might sign for. So we're able to provide those services. As far as from a technology standpoint, we're very, established in that way, which I think a lot of smaller agencies or, more boutique agencies don't actually have those resources where we do, which I think is huge. And then just innovative. We use analytics, we use video analysis as far as recruitment for players, but part of the reason we do that is because we'll do a lot of research on the player in terms of before we sign them. So that way, once they're signed and we're pushing them to a club, we already have these resources and this information available to share with a club who might be interested in a player. So yeah, that would kind of be, not kind of, those are the areas that I feel we exceed most other agencies, and why we've been able to find success in a short amount of time.
Got it. In regards of like money-wise, financial-wise, you said cap 20 players. Okay. Mm-hmm. Obviously, for obvious reasons, personal relationships, so on and so forth. Do you think there's a way to increase that number organically and the way you want it to? or is it just something that you guys have to stay capped at and you'll continue to stay that way?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something we're already looking at, which is a good thing because it means the agency's trending in the right direction. I think it's like any business. At some point, you're going to need to bring on staff or bring on people that are other licensed agents that maybe are in another market or are in the same market, but can be available to help your growing needs as far as clients. So I think for us, when we are at a point where, hey, we want to bring on more clients, that's when we'll bring on an agent to join the team. And obviously that process would be very, very serious because we'd want to make sure we're bringing in someone that aligns with all of our values as far as how we work, being transparent, honest, innovative, someone who ultimately at the end of the day, who's going to work really hard too, is definitely important. So, but yeah, to answer your question, the cap of 20 is definitely pretty, I guess, concrete as far as it goes with a two-man team. But when we do feel it's the right time to bring on more, we would certainly grow the agency and add another person to our staff to meet those needs.
Got it. Yeah, great points. Last question here. The last two questions. What are your short-term goals and long-term goals?
Short term, I mean, make it through this transfer window. Yeah, that's it. You know, we've done good work. I think probably in the last 2 months, about 15 new contracts signed, which is obviously good, but still about 5 or 6 left to get done. So you can't really sleep as comfortably as you would until all of your clients are done. So there's still a few to get done there, which we definitely will. So I'd say short term, make it into February, March, and then long term, I mean, just continue to grow it. I mean, ultimately, I want to build this to the point where it's an agency that is recognized in Canada as far as the top agency. I think we're already on the way there, but I think there's room to improve still, and grow it to the point where, you know, there's so much talent here in Canada that's coming up that these players are going to be playing in top leagues. I think that won't happen overnight. That'll take, you know, years and years, but just to be a part of those players that are going to be pushing on into those top leagues, that's a long-term goal for us for sure.
Absolutely. And the last question I'll ask you is, how important is it to have an agent for players?
Very important. I think it also depends on where you're at in your career, though. Like if you're a player, just for example, who's, you know, maybe not at the professional level yet, I don't think you necessarily need to tie yourself up with an agent. I think you should focus more on your own development. I think sometimes there's like a misconception amongst players that, oh, I signed with the agent, so now I'm a pro. Like maybe the agent sees the upside in you and wants to sign you early on so they can start building that relationship. But if you're not at the level, like just because you've signed with an agent doesn't mean a team's going to sign you. You know what I mean? That's not how it works. So I think, like I said, there's certain instances where it doesn't make sense to sign with an agent, but I think ultimately guidance, advice, coming at it from a perspective of precedent and looking at previous players that you've worked with, you know, you can kind of go and show players that, you know, you have a history of finding them the right fit, the right team at the, you know, right stage in their career, all those things which players need, rather than kind of doing it on their own. It allows players to focus on the field, and the agent takes care of things off the field for them, which I think will help them perform on the pitch. And then also, like, looking at it on the other end of the spectrum, when a player is getting into their older ages, like maybe how can that agent help them as far as getting them opportunities after their career is finished. You know, also helping them find sponsorships. You know, we've done that for a few of our guys, which, you know, ultimately gets more money in their pocket, but it's something that we're able to take care of off the field for them, so they don't have to stress about that. They're giving you the platform with their performances, and the agent is then taking care of everything else, right? So I think the main thing is so that the player can focus on what they need to focus on, which is on the pitch.
Absolutely. Great points, Joshua. Was there anything that I was missing that I didn't ask you or that you wanted to add in here?
No, I think we've covered it all, to be honest. I
Awesome.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great to have you on. I was excited to do this and have you on. So again, thank you for joining us on the One Soccer Nation podcast today. And yeah.
Sweet. Thank you, my man. Appreciate it, Kareem, and definitely keep in touch.
Absolutely.